So, the Sonic Forces world map. Is it me or does it actually look like Asia into Europe? Especially the Europe part. It kind of makes playing the game fun if you constantly imagine him running away from in between China to all the way to France. Look, doesn't it look like Italy and such? Oh, that's the moon. Anyway, Sonic Forces! Yes, I'm doing another cheap, off-the-cuff, not-written script video thing. Here is my Luke character. I try to make him as dissected as possible, but didn't really find all good stuff. So now he's kind of Wild West look. I did have a top hat, but it's white, so eh. I'll have to do with the cowboy hat. Looks ridiculously cool in a dumb way, so that's good. But I think I won't be playing as Luke. I'm gonna play as Shallow, the Wave the Shallow, Swallow, dressed up as Keto Kid. Because in the game you kind of need to unlock a bunch of medals with each character. Anyway, so there's an actual proper Dissected coming that I scripted. Probably around Sunday, but I have to wait for a couple voices because for a couple guest characters and all that. So I figured people want to hear my thoughts on the game before I have the time to complete a full proper video and with editing and all that stuff. So I'm talking off the cuff here. Yeah, man, there's a big war going on, and it isn't Sonic Army versus Eggman's Army. It's it's the critics against this game. Man, this game gets a lot of bad press and just get punched. I actually like this game. Surprisingly, yes, I do enjoy myself. And I think it's mostly because it's really focused. It's like I was when the game was announced, I was constantly waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, because every Sonic game always has an annoying gimmick. There's always some stupid puzzles, or the wisps are annoying, or something that ruins the fun, ruins the tightness, ruins the focus, the excitement, action that you want. But surprisingly, this game never really dropped that shoe. It starts off as a fast platformer, and that's how it ends. It's very straightforward, surprisingly. So in that regard, it is kind of like Sonic Generations 2. I will say it is worse than Generations 2 in terms of gameplay. That's a shame. Not gonna say this is a good game necessarily. It is a step back in terms of gameplay from Generations. But it isn't Lost World or Color as far as I'm concerned. Those games really annoyed me. They were very gimmicky and unfocused and constantly made me do things I didn't enjoy. At least I'm enjoying myself here. It's really an arcade game. It's very easy to play, but hard to master. Like, beating the game is a cinch. It's super easy. So it gets a little annoying in the later levels, but generally speaking, you can just plow right through it. But if you want to beat the level... Well, actually, getting an S rank is also pretty easy. I got an S ranks on most levels except the final stages, although I only played this game for 1.5 day yet, so I haven't even mastered most of the levels yet, so... But yeah, not losing rings or doing some missions can be a little bit more challenging. Yeah, I agree with the complaints most people have about the game. They are absolutely correct. However, I very much disagree on how serious those problems are. Because yes, the controls can be very awkward in specific spots, but most of the time I'm kind of enjoying myself. The game's biggest sin, as far as I'm concerned, is just it wastes a lot of potential. I mean, the whole concept of the game is Eggman being in charge of the world. He took over the world, and it's so annoying that we never get to see much of that. It's like, isn't that what you want to see? Don't you want to see Dr. Eggman in a throne room, having his own television studio, and constantly having those RoboCop-style fake commercials, and you know, announcing things, constantly being on the radio. Citizens, it's 10 o'clock. It's Dr. Eggman worshipping hour. You immediately worship me now. Put a bucket on your head and bang it on a hammer in honor of your great leader, Dr. Eggman. Rah! Like that. You want Dr. Eggman to be at top of his game. You want him to enjoy himself. You want him to see him turn the entire world into a big theme park. But something that nuts never really happens. In fact, Dr. Eggman spent most of the game just kind of screwing around in Green Hill Zone with Orbot and Cubot, and it's like, man, what's even the difference between him being in charge and him not being in charge? Sorry, people who like to look the fox. I'm changing the avatar because I need to unlock other stuff with the other species now. It's one of those games that wants you to collect a lot of stuff. You don't have to, but yeah, it's kind of satisfying to unlock lots of new items for your avatar and dress them up a little bit. I'll probably get bored to unlocking stuff after a couple days. Although I probably won't get bored to playing the game and do enjoy myself. This is the perfect game if you're that bored for an hour and you just quickly want a rush of action and you just quickly play a game for a bit. Also, this game got a lot of attacks for being super linear, but as you can see in this level, there actually are plenty of different routes. They really should have shown this level as classic Sonic stage in the promotional material. I think a lot of people would have complained less than the extremely linear Green Hill Zone stage. Also, this stage really has an underappreciated song. I really liked the classic Sonic song of this level, but I think I'm pretty much the only one. Everyone's always hating on the classic Sonic music. And in terms of Green Hill Zone, I agree, but I kind of like the song of this stage. Anyway, yeah, man. I'm enjoying this game, especially from the perspective of a parody writer or a comedian or like a guy who loves to make jokes about Sonic game, because this is, I think this is probably the biggest goldmine of jokes in Shadow the Hedgehog. But outside of that, I can imagine that the story's a big disappointment. A lot of people call it very dark and edgy, which it really isn't. It's boring. It's the same as Sonic 06. It's not dark or edgy or scary. It's just boring. In fact, the few times something actually vaguely scary or dark or edgy happens, you're actually happy because you actually get awake for a moment. Like, oh my God, Sonic got killed. Wow, actually they actually had the balls to do something. Because most of the game is just, in Sonic 06 case, Robotnik explaining things. Oh, let me explain my plan. Blah blah blah. This is going on. Like, there's just not much energy to it. And Sonic Forces is kind of like that. Like most of the dialogue in this game is just explaining stuff that you don't really care about. It's like, oh, there's robots here. Oh, we need to stop this generator. And it's like, yeah, sure. But like, I like the idea of them talking during the levels, but A, they talk way too much, especially considering how short the levels are. And B, the reason why I would like the idea of them talking is that they could actually get a lot of interesting information across. Like, what if Silver got on screen and was actually talking about the reason why he came to the present? Like, okay, guys, in the future, this and this and this happened. Or, like, my timeline changes because of this and this and this. And he does mention in the comic, the prequel comic, that he doesn't have any reliable information about exactly what happens, which is kind of their excuse why Silver isn't very useful with his future information. But nevertheless, if he would at least say how the future would look like, it would actually like re-establish him from actually being from the future, which now the game never really explains. Silver's just kind of there, like he's just supposed to be here. And it would explain the stakes more. Like, it would have been more useful information. You get a lot more points across. You would be building the world. You would be establishing who Silver is. You would be actually explaining what the stakes of the game are. But something like that never really happens. They never really take advantage of people talking. If you're lucky, the stuff they say is just a casual little joke, like a little statement. And if you're just unlucky, they just explain stuff. And not very interesting stuff. Also, a very big problem with Sonic Forces. I really get the sense that Sonic Team is constantly shuffling the levels around extremely randomly. There's a lot of weird stuff. Like, all the levels that we got in the promotional material, what we thought were the first levels, were actually all halfway across the game levels. Particularly like classic Sonic's Green Hill stage, or that he fights the Ag Dragoon, actually happens halfway through the game, and not at the beginning. Same with modern Sonic stage where he's in the city. The very first stage we saw, that's actually, I don't know, stage 18 or something? It's definitely not the opening stage. And so weird, and it really feels like it's designed like the first level, because A, it's extremely easy, and B, the dialogue seems to reinforce that, because it goes like, oh wow, there's so many robots, oh look at what Eggman has been doing all this time. And if that's the first stage, then that dialogue makes sense. But in this game, you're already halfway through the game, and you've already been battling entire armies of robots. So like why are you now suddenly impressed about the robots? Weren't you impressed by the robots a couple levels before? Like, it really feels like the level was designed as the first stage, but then later switched to halfway through the game, but the dialogue hasn't really changed. And, this game is really messy in its construction. But in a way, I love that, because again, just fuels jokes for me. Like, especially Shadow's DLC is hilarious because the opening act of Shadow's DLC is supposed to take place in the pyramid stage, according to the comic and according to the dialogue, but for some reason Sonic Team seems to have switched the stage that now it takes place in the city. But they didn't change the dialogue, so it's fantastic. So Rouge is constantly saying weird stuff, like telling Omega to quiet down because it's a stealth mission, even though it takes place in the city where there's already robots crushing buildings in the background and all that. If you really pay attention to the dialogue and how it works with the context of the story, it's really funny sometimes. Although, you know, at least I'll give Sonic Forces credit for at least giving the levels like actual context. That's great again. Ever since Sonic Lost World and Colors and Generations, it's just super random. Although even it's a fake context of this game. Like, it still feels kind of fake. The game is really confusing in some elements. Like, for example, Green Hill Zone seems to be no longer to be part of South Island. Like, in this game, Green Hill Zone is actually on the mainland. In fact, it's a huge chunk of the mainland. If the world map is actually based on Earth, Green Hill Zone is pretty much the entirety of Russia. So, there goes your continuity. Well, I guess you could say, well, maybe only in Sonic Mania is Green Hill Zone South Island, while in Modern Sonic's Dimension, it's Green Hill Zone is like part of the mainland. Although even in Mania, they kind of screwed up how all the locations were in relation to each other, so... I don't know, it really comes across like Sonic Team is just constantly shuffling levels around, even if that damages the story. And it's really nitpicking. Normally I wouldn't give that much of a damn, but ever since Sonic Boom and Sonic Generations and Pontef's writing stuff, I've already been super sensitive to how meta everything is and how meaningless everything is. Like, Generations just felt like they're just throwing in a big giant mountain pile of references and fan service in an empty void, and that's about it. Like, there was no attempt to really make it feel real. So now you got Sonic Forces that actually does attempt to make it real, but it still really feels like, oh, here's a bunch of characters and here's a bunch of locations, but there's not really much thought put into it, how it's supposed to work. I'm gonna make Sonic Boom for fun. Like, when you beat the game, you actually unlock a lot of the clothes of Boom Sonic. So you can actually have 3 Sonics in the game. Well, he's gonna look kind of stupid because you can change his stomach. But hey, Boom Sonic's supposed to look stupid, I guess. So it's just kind of funny that I just have 3 Sonics. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the original plan anyway. But yeah, Sonic Force is very arcade style, which I enjoy. There's short levels, and there's, well, not many different routes, but it's a little bit. It's more than we thought originally. But yeah, they're just really fun to just quickly play and try to get a better score or more rings or all that. So on that level, I kind of enjoy it. It's very jump in and quickly play and get out. There's not really Boom Sonic shoes. I think I'll just... I think you can create a lot of characters. Like, you have Shadow Shoe and Amy Rose shoes. I'm gonna give you Sonic Adventure 2 shoes. I don't really deserve it, but whatever. Lots of stuff. Even Mr. T chains. And of course, that little scarf. Oh. They're really obsessed with like technical stuff, like cyborg science fiction space clothes. There's not enough normal clothes. I want mundane clothes. Although, you know, you do have the little office worker's shirt. It's kind of funny. The bodysuits are kind of weird. But yeah, there's no bodysuit to give him a Sonic Tomic. Let's make him Dr. Eggman fan. Sonic Boom is pretty much Dr. Eggman fan. Actually, it looks ugly. Never mind. I guess this will do. Doofy looking dumb little Boom Sonic. There we go. Now we have 3 Sonics together. Wonderful. Anyway, so I'm super excited the next coming days because, man, you know, we're gonna discover how much how well Sonic Forces will do and how well Sonic Mania will do, because that's almost just as exciting as just playing Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces, just seeing how well they're doing. Because, man, for the past decade, that's been a big discussion all we Sonic fans constantly had, right? It's like, Sonic needs to be serious in 3D and have lots of friends. Like, no, that's gonna doom the series. Sonic needs to be 2D and needs to be exactly like the classics. And we always had all those debates, and everyone was always disagreeing, and everyone would say how we can save the franchise and what direction we should take. But it's always just guesswork or predictions or people's opinions. But now, thanks to Sonic Forces and Sonic Mania, we can actually get the numbers. At least if Sega is actually finally willing to give us some numbers. Like, now we can actually discover what most audiences really want, and not just who's the loudest on the internet, what game critics think, because who cares about what game critics think. Probably can't even get past the tutorial stage. Nah, I shouldn't make fun of them. I'm not very good at playing video games myself. But, yep, Metal Sonic. Because for some reason Dr. Eggman doesn't want to create his own. He just lets Infinite make one. Which isn't too bad, but at least do more crazy. Oh, they actually do kind of crazy stuff like this, and he's kind of bigger, but why don't you fight like 2 Metal Sonics at the same time? 3, and then Shadow Showdown. It was probably too complicated. I was really hoping that by the climax, you actually would have Metal Sonic and Savage, Shadow, and Chaos. It's just mooks in the level, because, in Infinite can create an army of them, so you think they actually show up as actual mooks in the levels, but that never happens. So many concepts they don't really capitalize on. It's such a shame. But on the other hand, that's for me as a parody creator to fill in the holes. So again, that's why this game is kind of satisfying to me. Like what Sonic Colors and Sonic Lost World, as a parody maker, I can't really do all that much. Like, you can't really make fun of the story because the story doesn't take itself already serious. It's not interested in its own story, so there's not much to make fun of. And if all your jokes just boil down to, well, the characters say a lot of jokes, but I don't find them funny, that's also very obnoxious. There's very much you can do, but with Sonic Forces, there's so much stuff you can do because there's so many concepts. There's the creating virtual worlds, it's the whole army concept, it's the fact that you, like the player, like we can actually create our own character inside the game, so you can have like this whole meta thing where Sonic fans are literally in the Sonic game in a war. I think that's gonna be my big Sonic Forces parody. That the fan characters completely take over the entire war. Like, and it just becomes Sonic fans fighting among each other. No, it should be classic Sonic. No, it should be 3D Sonic. No, it should be Sonic's friends. Blah, 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 blah. And then they take over the entire war with Dr. Eggman as Sonic and all just kind of fading away or just standing on the sidelines and be completely discarded. Because that's a nice statement on the series in general right now. That the fan base and the crew is starting to become more important and more well-rounded than the characters themselves. But that's for later. I don't think I'll get to my big Sonic Forces parody until next year, because I still have Sonic Mania to make. I was kind of curious to hear what happens if you don't succeed in the boost. You just get a funny animation, but then you still win. But yeah, a lot of people complain about that. It's like a lot of stuff you do is super automatic and doesn't really matter. It's like, yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. I'm not gonna say it's good. I'm not gonna say I approve of a lot of the choices they make. But I will say it's not as disastrous as many people say. I kind of consider this game kind of like Call of Duty, in a way. Like, if classic Sonic is like classic Doom games, where it's all about just you as a gunman in a big labyrinth, shooting lots of enemies, and then Call of Duty kind of condenses that to more linear corridor shooting, but with a lot more set pieces, a lot more story in it. That's kind of what Sonic Forces is. It just takes a very complicated labyrinth-like classic Sonic game and it kind of condenses it to a much more fast-focused cinematic spectacle. So yeah, classic Sonic fans or people who really care about gameplay. The Nintendo fans are really gonna hate this because they're against that kind of thinking. But I do think there's a big audience for people who just like this spectacle. But those people are gonna be a little disappointed in how the story doesn't really have the balls to do anything. These are those Sonic Color style mini levels, but I don't mind them here because they're a lot more optional. Like Sonic Colors never really hit what's like a secret bonus stage and what's the main level, so you had to do everything. Here's kind of more on the side. But yeah, it's especially in those very platform heavy stages where you can kind of see how clumsy the game is programmed. It's a shame. I never found it bad enough that I really hate it. Like at least, yeah. But I really wish that you had added some elements of Sonic Lost World where you can kind of still cling onto ledges and stuff. I think that would have helped a lot if they did that. But oh well. But yeah, as soon as the game becomes very platform heavy, it immediately falls apart. But yeah, that was always my statement also with Sonic Colors, and even from Sonic Rush on in 2005. It's like, man, like, if you're gonna make Sonic this fast and focus on boost and super being fast and all that, then don't be making levels with all those tiny platforms. This Sonic's just not made for that kind of platforming. Like that's why I kind of like the Avatar characters more, or the levels more, because he's much more slow and has some of his wisps actually help with platforming a bit. Like, he is much more suitable for that kind of level, those kind of levels. I kind of like the wisps here too. They kind of remind me of how they were in Sonic Colors for the DS. Anyway, I've been talking too much. I'm just kind of rambling. Again, there's a proper video coming out later, around Sunday, I hope. But just wanted to say I do enjoy the game. So let there be a voice of positivity and all this negativity. And see you Sunday, I guess.